So now we can confirm with 100% certainty that there are absolutely no more excuses when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2 and developing your big game on the platform. Now, we already kind of went over this a little bit in my Star Wars Outlaws video that I did recently, but now we actually have the tech breakdown and details from one of the best in the industry when it comes to Digital Foundry. Now, there were other technical breakdowns from people out there, but it was limited in scope as the game just came out and they don't necessarily have the know-how to get everything done. But now Digital Foundry has taken a look at Star Wars Outlaws, and honestly, there are no more excuses when it comes to third-party titles on the platform. And I would say this, there is another big game that came out recently, and it just looks like a bait and switch at this point. And yes, I'm talking about Daemon X Machina Titanic Scion. So we're going to get into that as well. But let's go ahead and first start off with Star Wars Outlaws. We've got the full Cliff Notes version of the breakdown from Digital Foundry. So shout outs to Nintendo, everything for rounding it up. So here's the breakdown. There are some cut downs when it comes to the lighting and some of the ray tracing effects and some of the texture or architecture details when it comes to certain stuff. But overall, this is an incredible port on the Nintendo Switch 2, and they were able to cut back the file size all the way to only around 20 gigabytes, which is a third of the other console versions. And if you look at overall, when Digital Foundry broke it all down, like, yeah, there are some things that you can clearly tell. Yes, it is running at 30 FPS instead of the 60 FPS that's supported on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, but on Xbox Series S, it's actually at 30 FPS, and the frame rate is more stable and better on the Nintendo Switch 2 version than it is on the Xbox Series S version. Now check this out too. The game does use full DLSS with DSR support as well, and the typical resolution is 720p on Switch 2, but it has an output resolution of 1440p when docked. It's 540p in handheld mode, but at 1080p output with DLSS. 30 FPS target for Star Wars Outlaws on Switch 2, but like I said, it's very stable and there's no frame rate pacing problems. And on top of that, the VRR and what they've done with DLSS makes it play pretty smooth handheld mode and play great docked as well. So while the 30, you can definitely tell there, it doesn't feel like there's a bit of, I would say, irregularity when it comes to playing the game. It doesn't feel like when you're playing, man, like that's really hitching, or some issues that you see with 30 FPS with other games, or even 30 FPS with the Xbox Series S version of Star Wars Outlaws. So that's one of the super big impressive things about this version of the game. So really, it leaves no more excuses for other third-party developers when it comes to it. Ubisoft was able to do an incredible job, and once again, I can't believe that I'm saying this. If you would have told me what I'm about to get into right now, at least at this point, that I was going to enjoy, or I was going to be praising Star Wars Outlaws over what we saw with Daemon X Machina, man, I would have told you there's no way. But that actually seems to be the case, as the developers took their time to really optimize and get this version up to snuff. Now, another thing that you have to realize here is that while this game isn't rated super well on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series, it's pretty much like a mid to high-ish 70s game, depending on what platform and the reviews for that. It's much better now at this point than when it was when it launched. There were a bunch of annoying things that were fixed in some of the gameplay with the stealth segments and other things that actually made it better that probably would have bumped it up to a solid 8 out of 10 if they had those implemented at the launch on PlayStation and Xbox. So you also have to keep that in mind. It also comes with all of the DLC as well for the Switch 2 version for $60. And I think that one of the underrated features that people need to talk about a bit more is the Ubisoft Cloud save system. It supports full cross save with any other version of the game. All you got to do is upload your save to the Ubisoft Cloud and then download it on any other platform that you want to play it on. So if you're already playing it on PlayStation 5, or if you already had a file on there, or if you had it on PC, or if you had it on whatever other system that it's on, you can upload that save and then download it on your Switch 2 and play it there, and then vice versa. So if you want to play the PS5 version or Xbox Series X version at home, you can do that, and then on the go, you can easily swap that and take it with your Nintendo Switch 2, which to me adds a lot of value. It makes me think like, okay, maybe I'll go ahead and pick up that PS5 version as well, and it's cheaper on those platforms too, so it might be a good 1-2 punch overall. I think that a lot of developers need to invest into their own cloud save thing too, so I think that also, like, hey, no more excuses on that front, guys. We got to start getting cloud saves across the board when it comes down to that. Now, another thing is that people didn't talk about this because for some reason they didn't feel like talking about it, but this version also crushes the Steam Deck version, which I talked about a bit in my video. But yeah, the Steam Deck version clearly is not optimized the best for that platform, but the Switch 2 version, with what they're doing there, it seems like Ubisoft had a lot of talent work on this version specifically of the game. Now, there was some information that came out about no physical or no real physical version. It's a game key card, and I thought that it was interesting. So I wanted to go over that with you guys and see what you guys think on that one. So on Blue Sky, John Lindman of Digital Foundry talked about how solid the port was. Then people talked about, oh, well, there's not a real physical release on the cartridge, so what's going on there? So after a little bit of back and forth with a fan, an actual Ubisoft developer, he is the audio architect of the Snowdrop engine for Ubisoft. Snowdrop engine, that's the engine that powers a lot of Ubisoft games. Mario plus Rabbids uses Snowdrop engine. The Division uses Snowdrop engine, in addition to Star Wars Outlaws, this game as well. So Rob Batten actually jumped in to talk about this when it comes to why they didn't have a physical cartridge for Star Wars Outlaws. And he said this, quote, Snowdrop relies heavily on disc streaming for its open world environments, and we found the Switch 2 cards simply didn't give the performance we needed at the quality target we were going for. I don't recall the cost of the cards ever entering the discussion, probably because it was moot. Now, John Lemon replies with, okay, so I was right then. I had a feeling that might be the case given the amount of streaming going on in that game/engine, and based on the results we saw with other Switch 2 cart games. Rob replies with, I think if we designed the game for Switch 2 from the ground up, it might have been different. As it was, we built a game around SSDs of the initial target platform, and then the Switch 2 came along a while later. In this case, I think our leadership made the right call. So there you go on that, guys. That's one of the reasons why there isn't a physical version of Star Wars Outlaws, is because of the way that the Snowdrop engine actually streams the assets. And if you look at how they do it on the Nintendo Switch 2, it's actually quite impressive. I was playing the game, I've put 4 hours plus into it, and when you're driving, it really just feels like you're playing the game on Xbox or PlayStation outside of the resolution overall. So they did a great job of converting that massive game that many people felt that wasn't possible to do on the platform. They did a great job of converting that and getting it to run really good on the Nintendo Switch 2 version, and they are actually being rewarded for that. So I didn't really have much sales expectations for Star Wars Outlaws, and I wouldn't have guessed that Star Wars Outlaws would be a game that I'd even talk about this much. But once again, it proves so many things. It dispels so many narratives, and it gives people no excuse at this point, 3 months after the launch of the system, about to get a game of this quality, where Digital Foundry and many people playing it right now, myself included, think that this is the most impressive, best third-party game from a technical perspective. Also with gameplay, this might be the best one from the AAA major games, excluding some of the other stuff. Obviously, you have Street Fighter 6, you have other titles as well that play at higher frame rates from third parties that look great. But when it comes to a game that people felt couldn't run good on the system and had a lot of controversy beforehand, I think that Star Wars Outlaws 2 by far is the best, especially with what they do with the technology, having the DLSS, having all the different stuff converted over from Xbox and PlayStation. So definitely good, but it's being rewarded. Like I said, it's number 2 on the eShop. Yesterday, I reported that it was number 6, then it went up to number 3, and now it's number 2. And remember, with how the eShop works, at least, it does it by revenue. So based on how much the game costs, and then how much revenue it's generating within the last number of days. So you have a lot of people, particularly just word of mouth at this point, that are saying, hey, this is a really good conversion, because people really weren't talking about this game that much. People start talking about it, footage starts coming out, then all of a sudden you see its position when it comes to pre-orders and all that just explode. More and more people are talking about it and playing it to the point where it's ballooned up. If this game didn't have good performance and if people weren't saying good things about it, I highly doubt that it would have reached up to number 2 on here. Now, it's Star Wars, so people of course are going to buy a big, third-party Star Wars game on the platform, but I think it'd be lower on the charts. The positive word of mouth has absolutely been helping out this game, because there wasn't a ton of footage and there wasn't a ton of marketing. Ubisoft didn't really spend too much, and I think that they probably banked on the word of mouth being what is going to drive this game and sell the game. And it's absolutely working. And I actually don't see Star Wars Outlaws going anywhere else when it comes down to it, because it's a very unique type of game that's not a lot available on the Nintendo Switch 2 specifically. Switch 1, there are some open world games that you can play and things, but for Switch 2, there aren't a ton of games. So I see Star Wars Outlaws definitely doing good, especially if they have some discounts down the line for Black Friday and holiday and all of that. So I think that is definitely a good thing here too. So if you bring good conversions over, people will buy it. But this is the part of the video where I have to kind of ask a question. And I'm not going to sit there and say that this is 100% or it can't be fixed in the future, but it almost seems like Daemon X Machina, Titanic Scion. I have to look at two games coming out, two big games coming out around the same time, both on the same platform, both multi-platform overall. Yes, there's a difference between them just focusing on the Switch version or Switch 2 version of the game with Star Wars Outlaws when they already completed the PS5 and Xbox series, versus Daemon X Machina where they were trying to get everything when it comes to PC, Xbox, Nintendo Switch 2, and PlayStation all done at the same time. But you have to wonder, this seems like a little bit of a bait and switch, because Daemon X Machina does not run as good as Star Wars Outlaws. And yes, Ubisoft has a lot more money, they're a bigger publisher, I get that. But what was the point when it comes to Daemon X Machina Titanic Scion and kind of putting it out there for Nintendo fans? If you look at it, right, the first game was on the Nintendo Switch 1, Daemon X Machina, and it didn't necessarily perform great on that platform. Definitely had a lot of, I would say, sauce when it comes down to the game. It was a mech game with a cel-shaded type of art style and all that, and it was great. It was great, but had clear issues when it comes down to some of the things, which is why it doesn't have the best Metacritic score of like a 69 or something like that, right? So if you look at Daemon X Machina Titanic Scion, a little bit better with its Metacritic score or overall, but the performance on the Nintendo Switch 2 leaves a lot to be desired. It's not a stable 30 FPS. There are some issues there. There are clear problems with this game, and it seems like they spent the money that they got when it comes to Daemon X Machina and how well it did on the Nintendo Switch 1. And yes, there was a PC version, but there was an Xbox and PlayStation, and then used that to build a game for Xbox, PlayStation, and PC, leaving the Switch 2 version not necessarily running great. And I don't know how to feel about that one. It seems like a bait and switch. Now, let me know if I think I may be overreacting a little bit, but I would expect this as a game that was exclusive on the Switch 1 when it comes to consoles, at least. If they were going to leave the Switch 2 version in this state, I think that the game direction should have never been what it was. Use that extra power, use that extra beef of the Nintendo Switch 2 to build upon what you did with the Switch 1 game. Get that running at 60 FPS for the sequel, and then port that over to Xbox and PlayStation, and you're probably going to get 120 FPS plus overall. You're seeing the same thing happening when it comes to the Trails in the Sky first chapter. That game is built essentially for the Nintendo Switch 1. They have an engine that adapts, and then when you play it on PlayStation 5, it runs at 120 FPS maximum frame rate, whereas the Switch 2 version looks like it's going to run at either 60 FPS or maybe even 120 FPS. We'll see once it actually launches, but that is the way to get it done, especially if you're going off of a base of people that are probably going to be most interested in the game on the Nintendo Switch 2. Same thing with Daemon X Machina. I did not see really any of my mutuals that are into PlayStation or Xbox even talk about this game when it comes down to it. It was just Nintendo fans complaining that they didn't do a good enough job with the Switch 2 version, and they're going to buy it on PlayStation now. And we're also getting reports that Daemon X Machina Titanic Scion runs decently on the Steam Deck. What the heck? What is going on here? Clearly, they did not optimize and care about this Switch 2 version, or you would not have the Steam Deck version running better, a lot better, than the Nintendo Switch 2 version, especially coming off of just what happened with Star Wars Outlaws. So it seems like they used that money and they kind of got the Nintendo fans in with Daemon X Machina, and then made the game for Xbox and PlayStation and PC for the sequel, changing up the mechs to like the human armor, like Iron Man type of bodysuits, which is fine. You want to have a new direction, you want to have a new different thing for your game. I have no problem with that, but it seems like adding all of that to it, along with the massive open world or the bigger open-ended areas, left the Switch 2 version as the side piece overall, and the main versions are on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation, and I'm not sure if people even care about it that much. So we'll see how it does on those platforms. We'll see how it goes, but I think that I can look at this and say, man, they did not do the best. Now, once again, Like, they could have some patches, they could fix it up, but it doesn't seem like it was built with the Nintendo Switch 2 in mind first and foremost, which it should have been, which would be the bare minimum, would be 30 FPS with no major issues. That'd be the bare minimum. And it seems like they weren't even able to do that. But once again, we will have to wait and see how it all works out. But what do you guys think when it comes to Daemon X Machina Titanic Scion? Was there a bait and switch with the first game back in 2018 all the way to none at this point? And what do you guys think about Star Wars Outlaws overall? Does it make games like Daemon X Machina Titanic Scion and other third-party games that maybe have some issues, does it make it look bad? I think it does overall. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG content and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.